What's going on, guys? My name is Alex. I am a cinematographer and photographer based in New Jersey on the East Coast. Today, I just kind of wanted to go over just kind of like my goals and stuff this year for 2026. I was going to make like a Q4 video. Not too much happened. I kind of just did a lot of like my reoccurring client work, so nothing spectacular standing out, but overall, I guess just to go over 2025, it was a really good year. I did a lot of work overall. I did a lot of working days. I forget off the top of my head freelance wise, but I think it was like something like 70, 80 working days. And then that's not including some of the part time work that I do. So I did a lot this year comparatively to last year. Obviously, revenue reflected that. I think that also helped me personally realize what my goals are, not only as a freelance cinematographer and photographer, but also someone who wants to grow their business in this creative field. And something I wanted to do more is be hired out as kind of like an A to Z production company to where, we start at an intro call with the company and then take it all the way to post and delivery. I do a few of those gigs per year, but not as much as I'd like. If you've done that before as a freelancer, you know that, usually it's a lot more of an involved project, but usually the revenue is a lot better than if you're just freelancing as a DP, cam op, gaff, whatever. I do a lot of just freelance cam op cinematography work. I love it. I enjoy it. It's very easy. I just come with gear, shoot, dump footage, call it a day. Don't mind it. Shoot a lot of cool stuff, work with a lot of cool people, and 9 times out of 10, I'm usually working with friends, so it's a good time. But I definitely wanted to kind of scale up my business and do a little more of that A to Z production. I think I only did like 2 or 3 last year, and they were kind of like not crazy small, but not crazy big either, kind of smallish, medium size stuff. So I want to be able to start booking with new clients and stuff like that for some A to Z production stuff to where I can actually have, a full scale team on this stuff and really bring some cool stuff to life. So I wanted to go over some things that I learned over 2025. Like I said, it was a good year, but I wanted to reflect on some of the things I learned about myself, about the industry, about life, I guess, in general. So let's go over a few things that I learned. So the first thing I realized about myself, and this is something that I've kind of always known about myself, but really kind of locked in and realized like, okay, this is something I have to work on, is procrastination. And I'm sure if you're a creative out there, I'm sure you've dealt with it before. It is a common theme that we all seem to fall into. As we all know, around this time, this is the time to where we kind of all play catch up on everything. A lot of our books, might be behind. Tax season's coming up, so you want to get everything together. And work's very slow. So what do? We either sit and do nothing and kind of relax, which, no harm in that. That's good as well. But one of the things I've been kind of trying to do is I set up a list for myself of all the things that I wanted to accomplish on this like wintry break for now. And that's, some simple stuff like going over finances to more complicated stuff of like figuring out what I want to do for retirement, how much money I want to put away, etc. Some of my business goals for next year, like I discussed a little bit here. So just kind of establishing a list of all that stuff that I wanted to get done. And I made, progress here and there, but nothing super crazy. And that's kind of where the procrastination kicks in, is a lot of this stuff with this list. It's a fairly big list, so it can kind of feel overwhelming. And that's where, I've tried to learn to, take it one day at a time, but also not abuse that and procrastinate and never get anything done. Another one that kind of goes along with the procrastination is like poor time management skills. It's kind of funny because being on set, I feel like I have great time management skills. I get everything done on time. I'm always ahead of the game, trying to future-proof and everything when it comes to what gear needs to be prepped next and everything like that. So I'm great with that stuff, but at home, sometimes it's just difficult, again, with the procrastination and just the never-ending list, it feels like, of things to do. One of the things I've started to do is build like a master list of just like stuff that pops up that I need to get done. And then I try to narrow it down to smaller lists to where, like, let's say, Monday, Tuesday this week, I'm not doing much. So, okay, let's figure out what I can get done. Okay, maybe it's, update my timesheets, gather all my tax stuff ready and send that out to the tax person, CPA, etc. trying to narrow it down to more manageable, digestible tasks that you can actually complete in a reasonable amount of time. Another pitfall I tend to fall into personally is more idea than action. And what I mean by that is basically coming up with a lot of these video ideas that maybe I want to do, like a spec ad or, a little mini doc type of thing that I want to shoot. And then I come up with like a shot list and a brief and everything like that, but I just never follow through on it. So that's one thing I'm trying to work on, not only this year, but just going forward, especially with the wintertime being pretty slow. It's just kind of forcing myself into the uncomfortable zone of like, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect, even though you feel like it does. Just go out there and shoot it. You're going to become a lot more successful and sharpen your skills the more you shoot, rather than waiting to shoot a few things here and there and making them perfect, right? The more repetitions you get, the better you're going to get. So I'm trying to force myself out of that comfort zone because I feel like a lot of the times I'm like, I don't want to do it because I'm not ready, or, I don't think it's going to be as perfect as I want it to be. But sometimes you just have to push yourself out of that comfort zone and just get it done, because or else you're just never going to do it. And that's kind of a spot I've landed in. So a big one that I'm sure a lot of us fall into is it's okay to take breaks, right? If you're a freelancer, I'm sure you've fallen into the trap of just being a generic workaholic. That's something that I definitely really struggle with, is that just working all the time, answering emails at odd hours, yada, yada. So I think it's something that's always going to be a part of running this type of business, is you're always going to have to kind of deal with that type of stuff. But I've tried to enforce for myself, more regular business hours of like only answering emails 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or whatever. Or like if I have to answer an email, I'm going to schedule it to send the next day, something like that. So just being more on top of myself personally, of just trying to be better about time management, setting dedicated times for like office hours and responses and everything like that. That way you have a clear ideation of like what is work time, what is not necessarily playtime, but free time, I guess, and just being able to have a life outside of work. Another one is developing a business plan to help your company or business grow. It's very easy to just start a production company and be like, I want to do videos, and then just shoot whatever and do whatever, right? But I think it's also important to really sit down and think with yourself like I did over the winter break and just be like, what do I want to do with my company? What are my goals? What am I looking to achieve here, right? And once you kind of decide on those goals, instead of just going head first and just, I want to make a production company and I'll figure it out later, things become more clear. Obviously, I like still shooting a wide range of subject matters and everything like that, but I know this upcoming year I'm setting some goals to kind of push towards niching down, at least when it comes to A to Z production, of like, these are the set type of clients I want to go towards. But overall in the past, I haven't done that. I've just kind of picked up jobs here and there and see what I can do, and it's worked relatively, but I think it's important to really define your business goals and what you're trying to achieve, and make sure you're working towards those goals and keeping yourself responsible to actually achieve those goals or work on those goals, because it's very easy to just aimlessly hope for the business to run itself. And unless you have a clear set goal that you're trying to achieve, you kind of just float in this weird space to where you're making money, you're losing money, I don't know. So that's what I'm doing this year, is defining some goals of what clients I want to go after and what I want to achieve with that, and then pushing towards that direction while also still obviously freelance cam mopping and everything for just oddball projects that pop up. So those are most of the goals or things that I kind of learned about myself this year. I have 3 more very, very important life lesson goals that I kind of wanted to share that really kind of opened my eyes that not a lot of people talk about. One of them, learn how to set long-term and short-term goals. Very, very important. And make sure that you set achievable goals. It's very, very easy to overshoot and let's say like, I want to make $100,000 my first year of business. Realistically, how is that possible with doing video production? That depends on the space you're in, but probably for most people, not really possible, right? So what I like to do is set, let's say, 5 goals overall for my business. 3 of those goals will usually be some type of easily tangible goals that I know I can most likely achieve as long as I put in some effort. And then I'll usually have 1 to 2 more ambitious goals to where maybe it's not super hyper, unrealistic, like make $1 million that year, but it's a goal or two that will push me in a direction to where I have to actually step out of my comfort zone and challenge myself. So maybe like booking a retainer client. Like that's something that I've been trying to achieve for the past probably 2-3 years. It's been on my goal list each year when I make my new goals. So just making sure that you have achievable goals so you don't fall flat and feel like a failure all the time, because that's obviously not going to be very motivating, but also incorporating some harder goals that you could probably achieve or hope to achieve, but you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone to achieve them. Second goal/life lesson of the last 3 is I have a buddy that he was going in to this business as a gaffer, kind of built out his business around that, and now he's transitioning to be a DP. The one thing that he kind of told me after we sat down and talked one day was one of the biggest struggles for him was now that he's transitioning to DP out of gaff, he's kind of almost pigeonholed himself now to where he is struggling to find jobs as a DP because all of his contacts and clients as of right now know him as the gaff G&E guy, right? And a lot of the DPs he knows obviously aren't going to need DPs because they're DPing themselves, right? That's competition. So one of the things I would suggest is understanding that maybe your clientele right now may not stick around forever. And that's okay, right? If you go into working with a client for $500, you can't expect them after a year or two when you feel like you've leveled up your skill for them to pay $5,000 for a video, right? Same thing goes for career path, right? So you want to make sure that, maybe you're gaffing and lighting, but you ultimately want to be a DP. You make sure that when you're applying for jobs and stuff, maybe it is for a gaff or DP role or gaff a G&E role, you'll be like, hey, I'm down to do this job, but just so you know, in the future, I'm looking to, work in the camera department more or something like that. So always trying to push towards your end goal because it's very, very easy to pigeonhole yourself and kind of fall into this reoccurring state of just being stuck in this area that you don't want to be. And last but certainly not least, one of the biggest life lessons I think I probably learned over the past year or two is becoming financially literate / how to run a business. This is something I have probably brought up in a previous video, but I wish I had a class that I took in college to kind of learn this stuff. But a big up in the world, just in general, is taking a business class or just learning financial literacy in general, like how taxes work, how to make sure you're invoicing correctly, how to take care of all your expenses and make sure you're tracking everything right. These are super important aspects that I didn't take seriously at first. And not to say that it's necessarily bit me, but it's now something that I'm kind of almost learning from the ground up. And I feel a lot more set back and behind comparatively to other business owners. So if I were to go back, I would take a business class and I would just learn basic finance ability. Obviously, I took a personal finance class in school, but didn't really do much. There was not much real world application in that class, but those are the 2 things that I would highly suggest if you're going to get into the video business, especially in 2026, is take a business class so you learn just business 101 and learn how to handle finances. It's such a big, important aspect of running a business. I've basically been doing more bookkeeping work than shooting a lot of the time, so it's a big aspect of the business that not a lot of people talk about or mention, that it's more or less what you're going to be doing overall shooting. You might be spending weekends and stuff like that, invoicing and expensing and stuff like that while you might be shooting here and there on the week. So super important. Highly suggest learning those 2 things in 2026. So those are kind of my goals and everything I learned in 2025 and maybe 2024 too, but that's kind of what I'm taking into 2026 is just all of these things of just figuring out what direction I want to go in with my business, how I want to personally improve myself, making sure that I'm not pigeonholing myself, and making sure that I run my business properly, I track all my expenses and everything properly, and I become a more professional business owner, and also have personal time to enjoy with my family and just enjoy life in general. So I hope this video was a little helpful. Feel free to leave any comments down below. If you guys have any pro tips, for any of the subjects that we talked about today. I'm going to have some more videos that I want to do, probably going over like an FX6 rig and some other stuff, potentially like best items that I found were useful in 2025 as well. So tap a like if you guys want some more of that content, but hopefully this video was helpful, and I'll see you next time.